I'm just going to wait a few more minutes as a few additional people filter into the Zoom room. Very excited and pleased to kick off this very next session, FutureMD meets FutureTech, AI in the admissions process. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping notes. The session will be recorded and it will be available in approximately 24 hours within the virtual fair platform within the auditorium. Also, we will be taking Q&A towards the end of the session, but if you have a question at any time, I encourage you to pop it into the Q&A box, and then that's where we'll pull from when we ask questions at the end. All right, let's get started. Let's just dive into it. I'm so excited to talk about this topic. It's very popular. I know it's on everyone's minds, and we're dying to know what our panel of admissions experts thinks about AI. So today we're going to have Dr. Layla Amiri, Dr. Yanis Katroulis, Dr. Andrew Simmons, and Christian Essman. And now I'm going to pass it over to Layla to kick us off.
Thanks so much, Laura. We're so excited to be here, everybody, and looking forward to not only hearing from you, but also sharing our thoughts and ideas on AI in the admissions space. So as you see from our screens, I am the Associate Dean for Admissions at the Robert Lerner College of Medicine. Yanis is the Associate Dean for Admissions at the George Washington School of Medicine. Christian Essman is the Senior Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at Case Western Reserve. And Andrew Simmons is the pre-health advisor and professor at Brandeis University. So you'll get various perspectives from us. But before we get started, we're really interested to hear from you and what your thoughts are about this. So if you don't mind pulling out your smartphones for us and joining us at Slido, we'd want to get a sense of what your thoughts are about some of these AI-related questions. So our first question is, have you used AI tools to help you with your medical school application? And so this could be you in the applicant pool right now, or it could be you in the applicant pool in the future. And it looks like some of you are responding. So we've got about 500, a little bit over 500 people in the audience. We'll move to the next question once we've heard a little bit from some of you. Oh, look at that. Yes, occasionally. We'll wait for a little bit longer. And so just to give you a sense of how this scoring happens, it just puts it in order of frequency of responses. So the order of the answers may look different than what you're responding to on your phone or if you're on a computer. What do you think, Yanis? Are you surprised to see what you're seeing?
That question for me? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm not surprised that I thought we would see more people using it than being just curious about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a bit surprising. Good to see them.
Yeah. What do you think, Christian?
I'm frankly shocked.
So our audience is doing a good job by surprising us. We thought we had seen everything. All right, folks. So we've got about 10 people responding. Just to keep us going along, I'm going to, oh, you've just been responding to all of the questions. I see why it's taking a little bit longer. So which part of the process do you think AI could help with the most? They're pretty cut equally across the various areas, drafting or editing personal statements, but about equal in researching schools and fit, brainstorming ideas. Andy, I'd like to start with you as a pre-health advisor. What do you think about the way this data is shaping up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty consistent with what I'm hearing from students in terms of how they use it. The drafting and editing, I think, is of course the largest category, and that's not too surprising. With my hope is it's mainly about the editing, and More so about the editing and less about the drafting, but I'm sure we'll have more to say about that as we go. Because I
And
think that
Yanis?
the danger is that people begin to rely on it a bit too much for drafting. But again, I'm sure we'll get more into that.
Oh, sure, sure. And Yanis, if you don't mind, I'm going to tap you for the preparing for interviews. What do you think about that? Is the only 11% of our respondents are using tapping into AI for interview prep?
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that because I don't know if there are that many tools out there to help with interviews. I mean, we all know about ChatGPT and things like that that can help with essays, but I guess there are more platforms that are being developed for interview preparation, so we'll see more people using it, but I'm not surprised right now they're not.
Okay. So it looks like the responses are slowing down, so we're getting close. So look at this one. How confident do you feel in using AI tools ethically and effectively in your application process? Christian, can I throw that to you? What do you think about that? Seems like it's a little bit split.
Yeah, but perhaps this is a function of AI responsibility that students, if they're in college, getting this from professors they have or instructors they have about using AI tools responsibly, that it's kind of bleeding into, this part, what we're talking about today, that this is not an unknown, and they're hearing about it from school if the applicants or prospective applicants currently in school.
And so for our last question, we have been mostly asking you about how you've been using it. So we're interested to see how you all would feel if we started using AI tools. And look at that, 70% are concerned. So Yanis, I'll throw this one to you first, and then Christian, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I don't blame the applicants for being concerned about this. If those tools are being used or will be used, we need to do a better job at explaining how they work and what we would try to do with those tools. So being concerned is okay, and it's our job to explain how we would use those tools to screen our applicants.
Great. And Christian, what do you think about
Yeah,
this?
I like Giannis. I think we would need to do schools clearly will need to do schools need to do a good job of explaining how, if they're using artificial intelligence, how it's being used. But I would also argue on the other end how application review historically has been done. A lot of bias creeps in application readers, and it can just be human emotion. Like, you have to read a bunch of files tonight. You've been tired from working all day, and you just had an argument with your teenage kid about their homework, and now you got to go read applications. Some tools like this don't have emotion and don't would be able to, if trained or whatever, we can get into the nuts and bolts of it, but wouldn't have that kind of grouchy grumpiness or just have emotion seeping into how they're feeling when they're reading.
I think if I had to sort of chime in a little bit from the student voice, or do the best I can, I think what people want to feel confident about is that they're doing all this work on their applications and that they're actually getting, reviewed on the merits of their application. So I can totally see how students might feel like they're telling me not to take shortcuts with AI, but hey, what about you guys? So I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit there, and I think that's kind of the message that people would want to hear in terms of how admission offices are using it. But students at the same time have to understand, I think that, there's like some places are getting 10 or 12,000 applications, and that's a lot of hours spent, and so there can be some reasonable efficiency built in that still ensures that people are getting a fair look.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to our wonderful audience for playing along with us and responding to our survey, and thank you for our panelists. So we're going to move into the question and answer part of our session today. So we don't have presentations for you. This will be a conversation with our panelists. As was mentioned earlier, please drop your questions in the Q&A. We will get to them all after the series of questions that we've prepared. And just so you know, I'm going to go in the order of asking Andy first, Christian, and then Yana. So we'll ask our pre-health advisor, the voice of the applicant first, and then we'll have our two admissions representatives. So Andy, your first question is, what are some practical ways pre-medical advisors can talk to students about using AI ethically?
Well, I'll say a couple of things from my perspective. I think one would be to simply point out that unless you really spend a lot of time training the AI, if you use it to just generate text, generate your writing, pretty much you're going to get, what you're going to get is pretty generic. And so much depends on the prompt you put in, and do you train it to sound like you? And hey, do you really want the AI to have that kind of information about your writing? I mean, there's a whole host of issues there that I think students should be aware of. Um, so, and I would say the same thing in terms of engaging with all of the advice that's out there in the internet and the world about personal statements. That too can have a very constraining effect on the kind of essay you end up with, and you end up saying, "Oh, well, the AI thinks it should be like this. Everybody else thinks it should be like this. Well, that's the way it should be." And pretty soon, you don't really have your own voice in there. A second thing I would say is the work of engaging with the writing process is 100% worth it. If you engage with the process, you are engaging with thinking. You're thinking with your writing. It's like um, it's good for you. It's hard because it's slow, it's messy, it's inefficient. It's there's not really a right answer. But in the end, I think you'll be a better applicant because, for one thing, you'll have an authentic story to tell. And the other is you're just going to be better prepared for other facets of the application, in particular the interview, because the writing process really forces you to think about and integrate all the things you want to say.
Great, thank you. And there you're getting some hearts too, so folks are loving your response. Christian, I'm transitioning to you. What are the most significant signs that an applicant might have overused or misused AI in their essays or experiences section?
Well, I think in retrospect, so what ChatGPT came out, November 2023? So we were in the middle of that application cycle, so we wouldn't have seen it then. And I think it was probably last year where we would have started to see if applicants were using it. But at that point, I don't know if we knew if there's any kind of clues in there. Certainly, I don't know of a med school that's using some kind of technology to see if there's like an anti-GPT to detect it. But so I felt like last year still seemed organic, or as it has in the past, and the things we were reading. But this year, there seems to be some grammatical clues in some of the essay responses that, the lack of a better phrase, it raises an eyebrow. And so we can't say for certain that this is, been AI generated and it's not their authentic work, or but there are some grammatical clues and patterns that we're seeing, and that might be because as more people use these services and then are copying and pasting it in, we're seeing some patterns. Um, so, but there are some grammatical clues like semicolon usage and M dashes. And I say that we were having a prep call a week or so ago, and I said, I've seen more use of semicolons, which can be hard to use sometimes properly, but I see them all the time now in some essays. So it seems a little like you want to just kind of rub your chin a little bit, and makes you wonder if it's authentically written.
Mhm. And sometimes that emerges when we meet the candidates as well, right? When we're interviewing them, for example, and
Yeah.
the cadence of the language doesn't match the beautifully written essays with the proper use of semicolons, which
That
grammar
was
is so. Yeah.
just a kind of exaggerated example.
Okay, Yanis, my question for you is how do you feel about applicants using AI-driven mock interview platforms or simulators for practice? Helpful preparation or over-engineering the process in your mind?
It's a great question, Leila. And thank you. So you know me, I'm a big proponent of AI.
I do.
I really like it. I think there is a way to use it responsibly, of course, and always with human oversight. But going back to the interview simulators, I see them as valuable tools when they're used wisely. They provide access and feedback that many students wouldn't otherwise get, especially those that don't have a mentor or an advisor. And there are applicants that don't have a mentor and an advisor, and that could be useful to them. Um, but again, they need to be used thoughtfully. That is the most important thing. You can have access, as we said, to consistent feedback, exposure to a range of question styles, many different questions, and an opportunity to refine the communication, the responses in a low stakes environment, not at the day of the interview. So the opportunity to practice is great. But as we said, like with any other tool, it depends on how we're using it. So if an applicant relies solely on AI simulations and memorizes all those responses, then they can sound over prepped or fake sometimes, or rehearsed, which is something that the interviewers are very, very good at identifying. So we train them. They know what to look for. So if somebody is over prepped, it looks like they memorized those responses. It's easy for our interviewers to identify that. The best approach for me is to use these tools for reflection, not perfection. Okay, we're not looking for perfect. We're looking for genuine. And the AI tool, the AI simulator can help you give your examples or your responses a little bit more depth. But you still need to describe the authentic stories and your experiences. Again, AI can prepare you technically, but you still need to be authentic and self-aware. And yes, if it's not perfect, we're okay with that. We want it to be more of view of your personal experiences, not something that's over prepped and fake.
Excellent. Thank you. Andy, I'm coming back to you with my next question. How might advisors help applicants navigate the tension between technological assistance and authentic self-expression?
Yeah. Um, so one thing we do as part of our application prep program, just sort of as a practical tool, and that we're doing actually as early as now for the 2027 cycle, is to provide short short essay prompts. Um, so prompts that ask people to think a little bit big picture about what they want to convey in their applications. So, um, for example, in what ways have you developed and or changed intellectually since starting in college? What challenges have you faced in your academic work that might be important for admission committees to know? What kind of provider do you imagine yourself becoming? It's an interesting question because I'm seeing some of the answers now that students are coming back with, because it really forces them to think both in terms of the experiences they've had and what they've gotten out of it. How has your understanding of your chosen field and or healthcare in general evolved or grown since starting college? That's a nice question to get people away from the, hey, I've wanted to be a doctor since I was 9 years old, and more towards, well, now that I'm an adult, essentially, here are some things that have really changed my perspective. So it's really about, we really want to help students think about their narrative and the story that they want to tell. Doing that up front, before you start using that technology, I think is a good idea. But with that said, you can take ChatGPT or whatever, and you can ask it to generate a set of brainstorming questions to help you get started on your essays. And I've done this exercise, and it's maybe some of you out there have done it as well. We have a set of brainstorming questions we give our students to help them get started. And we also run an essay workshop. You know, it's, I, again, I think it's worth students' time to really do this stuff because it really gets them thinking. And you do it up front, it's going to really make your life better later on when you have to write secondary essays um, and you have to do interviews and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how we've been approaching it.
That's great. Thank you. So as a support mechanism for helping refine what they're submitting. Okay, Christian, back to you. How can applicants use AI responsibly to brainstorm or refine their writing without compromising authenticity? And if you don't mind commenting a little bit on the grammatical use, it seems like
I
there's a lot coming
know.
in about the colons and the em dashes and all
I
that.
know.
I won't be
I'm
able to
seeing
do that.
that, and oh my goodness. All right, we'll come back to that. I wanted to tag on to your question, but also it goes along with what Andy was just saying, using it for brainstorming. Because I think for the first time in our work that we do, we have these tools, these generative AI tools have brought some equity to a process that we've kind of never had before. Meaning, we always know there's been people in our application pools who don't have people like Andy in their lives as pre-med advisors or pre-health advisors, or we've always known that there have been students who have hired admissions consulting services to assist them and help them, review their applications and stuff like that, and help them brainstorm and come up with questions to ask them for reflection. But now with these kind of tools, it does provide some equity that more people have access to get some feedback, or at least somebody asking them questions. So I like Andy's idea of using these kind of tools to ask you some reflective questions to help you build your story, not write it for you. And
Yeah.
so I think there's an opportunity there using these tools to help you brainstorm and do some self-reflection, have some questions posed to you that maybe you've really never thought about before, going deeper, exactly what Andy said, then beyond. I've always wanted to do this since I was 9, but getting kind of down into the into the nitty gritty of like a really deep, where's that fire coming from inside since 9 years old to do this. And then refining writing and without compromising authenticity. Sometimes maybe some of these for secondary essays, you're wondering like, how should I structure this? Or maybe some outlining to help kind of put some thoughts together and give you a proposed outline of how to maybe approach the structure of an essay that you have to write. I know I use it to when I have a couple clunky sentences that I'm like, this just doesn't seem smooth. Give me a couple options to help smooth this out because I'm trying to, make some sense out of two clunky sentences. So I think like that seems fair without taking away somebody's writing voice from this process. And I know I've seen some comments on here. I touched a nerve with em dashes and semicolons, and now there's going to be people with pitchforks and torches in the street who are semicolon fans. As I said, it was kind of an exaggerated um, example, but I have to say, in doing this 20 years, there's not a lot of, you don't, my frequency of reading these essays with perfect grammar is not always there. It hasn't been there in the past.
I will say I was reading a student's essay yesterday, and so many of them, like the typos have gone away. Like the editing is amazing, like relative to what it was a few years back. And there was a typo, and I was like, "Hey, you've got a typo here." And she's like, "Oh no." And I'm like, "No, that's okay. It shows that you actually like wrote it yourself."
That's right.
She was very worried, like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "No, it's fine. Really, I'm just credit to you for writing it yourself, I guess."
That's great. Yanis, I'm coming back to you with another interview question. What advice would you give to applicants who are using AI tools to prepare, but still want to come across as genuine and spontaneous? And I know you talked about this a little bit earlier, but could you give us more context here?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's an excellent question because it really gets to the heart of this new era of preparation. And I kind of agree with brainstorming. That's, I think, a very important tip that, you know, if our applicants left with that message, that would be important. Just use this for brainstorming, not to write your essays, you know, or with your interview. You know, we have to be careful. And by the way, I would also advise them to check on the websites of the medical schools, or especially for secondary applications, whether the school allows the use of AI, because there are schools that do not, including ours. So I would urge them to take a look first. But going back to the interviews, my advice is, go back to your story. Use AI to discover that story, not to script it. Again, AI can help brainstorm with the experiences, connect them to those competencies that the schools are looking for. AI can help structure the responses clearly, but it should not be scripted, because we are able to detect that. You know, I would advise the applicants to practice saying, you know, the responses out loud, but with a human, from a human perspective, and not sounding like robots. Because, you know, there was a discussion about, oh, if we don't have typos, how do they know that we're real and it's not AI? Well, it's not only about the typos. If we read the whole essay, it's pretty obvious. Applicants might think that it's not, but it is pretty obvious that it was written by ChatGPT. It's not that difficult to distinguish. And especially, we're talking about people that read thousands and thousands of applications. I'm sure all of you, Christian and Layla, you're very familiar with essays. We've read so many. I mean, we can immediately spot if somebody used, you know, ChatGPT um, to do that. I still believe it's very useful for interviews to practice with a friend or a family member or someone around them to you know, to see how they sound. Close the laptop. Do not use a laptop for that. Now, it's good to use those tools initially to get some information, to see if there's anything that needs to be added in some of those responses. But those small pauses and you know, even, you know, the language that we're using, it's very, very important to the interviewer, so they can understand what you're saying, you're critically thinking, and that it comes from you and it's really genuine. And if you make a small mistake, it's not the end of the world. Okay, at least we know it's coming from you, not from AI. Again, we're not saying make grammatical errors in your essays and make mistakes during your interview. That's not the message we're sending. What we're saying is, do not try to use AI and sound like robots. Sound like humans, like what you would do in an interview. That is high stakes, and we all understand that. But try to organize your thoughts yourself and bring the reflection, the empathy, and the individuality that no algorithm and no tool can replicate.
Thank you so much, Giannis. So I've got a couple questions that I'm going to ask all three of you. The first one is, so I heard recently that an individual from our university was speaking to a CEO of a major company, international company, and just asking about hiring practices and what that looks like. And they said that having AI proficiency is something that's going to be a requirement for anyone that we hire moving forward. And then, you know, there was a longer conversation. So in the context of our session today, Andy, could you tell us what future competencies applicants may need to have as AI becomes more integrated into medical education and healthcare? And then I'll ask the same question of you, Christian and Giannis. And I think it'll be interesting because, Giannis, you can give us the medical provider kind of perspective as well on that. So I'll hand it over to our panelists.
I'll tell you what I think, and you know, I'm not a
Okay.
medical educator, but from my end, and first of all, these tech literacy is just always going to be a thing, and AI has added a new wrinkle to that. And so what we're essentially talking about here is, Well, now we really have to think about what's the ethical use of AI and the best way we can use it, that it doesn't compromise us. And I think too, in the for physicians and providers, that's also a big question, as a patient, I don't, I want to be sure you're actually doing the work. But I think critical thinking is the number one competency. So many of these tools are alluring because they seem efficient and they seem omniscient, which they are not. And you can sort of look at what the AI skeptics are saying. And right now they're saying, hey, this is not omniscient. This makes mistakes. So you need to be really aware of that. They challenge us to understand when technology is generating insight, um, and and when it's reached its limit on those insights. In other words, we don't want. I just don't outsource your thinking to AI. I think that's essentially what I'm getting at, and that's consistent with my earlier advice about how the writing process itself is a process of thinking. Um, I would add to that commitment to learning and growth, which is, I think, playing off what I just said before that, which is it's going to keep changing. Things are going to keep changing, and the more you are committed and intellectually curious and willing to, kind of challenge yourself to grow with it, it's going to help you. And I mentioned ethical responsibility to self and others. And again, what we want from our doctors is excellence. We want physicians who do not take shortcuts and who are fully engaged with patients. I'm not a medical educator. I'm speaking strictly as a patient. Um, you know, the minute you start taking shortcuts with the AI, it's a slippery slope in my mind.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Christian?
As Andy was speaking, I was thinking that this generation of prospective students is in a time when technology is advancing so fast that if there could be a competency for technological curiosity, I think that would be something to be mindful of, because this type of emerging technology will be someday probably baked into most of the healthcare setting work practices. Ambient AI is already being used or beta tested in doctor's offices and exam rooms. And so our future trainees, once they get out of school in 4+ 3-4 years of residency, will have a lot of technology wrapped around them that looks very different than it does today. And so I think being technologically curious is something that, if you're not a data management major, or like a data science major, or some kind of major, that a computer science major, like, you're going to need to be kind of plugged into what some of these what this technology looks like, and be involved in it, because it will involve you.
Thank you, Christian. And Yanis, your thoughts?
That's a great question. And I see there are a lot of questions actually about, people are concerned about, how do you know that we're using AI? Because I'm not having any typos or any issues with my, personal statement, and I'm spending hours and hours, days and days to write this. Are you now telling me that I shouldn't have done that? And if it's well written, that I have an issue? No, that's why actually we need AI literacy, actually, because if you're doing your due diligence and you're using those tools responsibly, like to help you put your ideas together, but not write the essay for you, then one, that's obvious to us. We don't need to go look for the typos to understand who wrote that. But and of course, we appreciate those that spend time thinking and writing their essay appropriately. Of course, we do appreciate that. But that goes back to the need for competencies and we're doing that work right now to develop competencies for AI and how that's used. And later, I think we've discussed that here at GW. For example, we recently started a course for third and fourth year medical students on the use of AI in healthcare, and I'm co-directing that course with a colleague of mine here. And we actually did it in the last 2 weeks, and it went really well, and the students found it very useful because we talked about all those different examples of AI tools, how they should be used, because once they graduate, they'll go out there, and Christian mentioned some of those examples of tools that they're already being used in healthcare. Electronic health records, like, for example, they have embedded AI tools, and the students and, future providers, they need to be comfortable on using those tools responsibly. And it's the same with ChatGPT. If you start learning how to use those from early on, even with your medical school application, that continues with you being a provider later in the future using similar tools. So again, we have to do better at teaching our students on how to best assess and use AI tools, but it also starts from even before they get into med school. And if we had to develop some competencies related to AI or technology in general, I think that might be a good idea. And they need to start thinking about this even before they get into med school.
Great, thank you. So Christian and Yanis, there has been a lot of questions in the Q&A as well as the chat about the use of AI in screening of applications and it potentially replacing holistic review. Could either one of you share if you're exploring using AI on the admissions side and what that might look like and what mechanisms you have in place to ensure that applicants continue to be treated fairly as they have been up to this point in both of your processes?
Sure, Giannis, I'll start, and then
Sure.
we at Case Western, we are not using AI tools yet. We're AI curious and looking very, very closely as to how we would implement some kind of tool. But more importantly, like, we need to ask ourselves, what are we asking it to look for? And what are we asking it to help us do, assist us? What we would like to do and how I would describe it to people is one day, once we implement some kind of tool, it would be augmented intelligence. It's the human is still in the loop. It's helping the human. It's bringing efficiency to a process. So we are, like I said, we're not using anything yet, but we are deeply exploring this because we want to, when we, in any school that implements these kind of tools, understands the responsibility. This is, and not taking it as a shortcut, but will be very intentional about what they're doing. I can promise you, I know a lot of these people, like Giannis and Layla have been friends of mine for a while, and we have friends around the country, and this is a hot topic in our discussions. And there's, at the end of the day, everybody is always thinking about you, the applicant, and making sure it stays fair and equitable to applicants. But there is a reality to some of our processes. Application numbers are through the roof.
Yeah.
We work on lean admissions offices, and we're trying to find ways of bringing efficiency and maybe even better opportunities to review applications than relying on what we have for literally decades.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Christian, and I would say the same. We have a large number of applications. So here at GW, we get over 17,000 primary applications, which is a very large number. It's very hard to handle. We are not using AI currently in our admissions process. We are looking into it. We're working on it. Again, the idea is not to replace human reviewers. It's to highlight applicants that might be a good fit for the school. We're not trying to, there is this misunderstanding that we're trying to screen out applicants. That is not the case. The case is to highlight those applicants that might be a good fit for our schools. And, it's we'll always have human reviewers because it is important to have human oversight, like with any other system. And in terms of confidentiality and privacy and data privacy, this is extremely important to also understand. We know how important it is. Our applicants, you are sharing a lot of information with us. So we keep that data very secured right now, and we will continue to do so and not share your data with anyone because we understand how sensitive that data is. And that won't change whether someone uses AI or not. We're already using databases in our admissions offices. It's not like we're using paper files and we're going to go to an electronic system. We're already using some of those systems. We have databases and the data is secured. So we'll continue to do so whether there is an embedded AI tool or not. And so we are thinking about all those things. And as far as the holistic review goes, we will continue on that path because we believe that we need to look at our applicants holistically and at all the things that they have achieved. And that doesn't change with AI because somebody uses ChatGPT to write their essay or because we're using a tool. People have been getting help to write applications for years, and we know that it's not something that we haven't dealt with in the past. And we are still doing a holistic review, even though some people get help in one part of the application or another. And we can still identify those applicants that are a good fit for our school, but also we want to be a good fit for those applicants. So we are not new to this. And as Christian mentioned, we know each other well. We're all used to this. We have experience, and the people that are reviewing the applications, the admissions committees, these are experienced people that have been doing this for quite some time, and they have guidance and they have training. So we are not trying to replace that decision making with a computer system. That is definitely not the case. And I can speak for Leila and for Christian. That's not our goal, which we will try to be more efficient. Again, the number of applications is going up, and we're struggling at times with this large number of applicants and with having so many wonderful applicants that have all the elements that we're looking for. So there will be more discussions about this, but I want everyone to be assured that we are taking into account their perspective. And as Christian mentioned, we're here for you, and we take everything that you're saying and all your concerns into account when we design or develop any of those systems.
Thank you so much, Yanis. A question that has come up that I'd like all three of you to address is the individual who's unsuccessful in the application cycle. Some of them may or may not receive feedback. So Yanis, you're getting 17,000 applications. Clearly, you're not going to be able to provide feedback to, the 15,000 people that you don't get to interact with if you interview 2,000. What are your thoughts about applicants using AI to help them with their application? Reapplication, I guess. So
Yeah.
Andy, I'll go to you first as a pre-health advisor who has this responsibility, and then maybe Christian or Yanis, one of you can take that question on.
It's a question like, should students use AI to figure out why they didn't get in?
Yeah, do you think it's a reasonable way to
That's an
use it?
interesting question. I wouldn't, I'd have to experiment with it a bit, but I have my doubts because, what data is out there that the AI has scraped up that indicates, other than GPA and test scores, I don't really know what the AI is going to tell you. It's I have a lot of conversations with students who don't get in, and and again, when it's not strictly related to the numbers, that gets a little, there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of, these, were you perceived by admission committees as somebody for whom medicine was really the best career fit? Is probably the biggest concern that we want to talk about. And why would that be? And what can we infer from what we're reading in your essays? And then it depends on whether or not you had interviews, and maybe that's in some ways an easier question to answer. If you had interviews and you didn't get in, it's pretty likely that the interviews didn't go well, and then that was the key factor, and we really have to talk about what might have happened there. And again, it comes back to if you had an interview, there was a perception that you were not a fit for this profession, and I don't know that AI can answer that question. But that's my take on it. You guys sit on the other side and have a much better idea about it. But that's kind of my starting point. There's just a lot to it. It's maybe too subtle for AI to give you much insight about.
Christian, you
Christian,
want
are
to
you
come in?
almost? Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I was the word nuance was coming to mind as Andy was saying it. And I've had these conversations like Andy has had where you sit down and you kind of try to figure out where things could have gotten caught up. And sometimes it's guessing because we don't know either. Sometimes it can be something that's like, maybe the anchor was the MCAT or the GPA that you can kind of point to. But if it wasn't, if the other things, if the metrics, academics seem to be strong, or you have to look in other places and look under rocks. And sometimes you're turning over a lot of stones and looking in a crystal ball. I'm like, well, maybe it was this or that. And then when Andy said the interview thing, I mean, there's that layer too. I just don't know that a tool is, it sometimes takes institutional knowledge or um, years of experience, just kind of understanding where some of the possible pitfalls can be that I don't know that a tool yet maybe is sophisticated enough to be able to provide that kind of helpful feedback. Giannis, what do you think?
No, I 100% agree with you. I don't think there's a tool out there that can help with that. Again, institutional knowledge and again, sometimes we might have perfect applicants that because of the competition, unfortunately, don't make it, but they could be wonderful, and there's nothing wrong with their applications. One thing that I wanted to clarify, though, because I saw it in the questions, is people are asking whether the holistic review process includes a quantitative component. I think there's a misconception in our applicants that holistic review means we don't look into the MCAT or the GPA. That is absolutely wrong. Holistic review includes academics. So that needs to be there. It's not if you don't have the academics and you have everything else that we don't care about it. So this is something to be mentioned. But a lot of times it's either that something was wrong with the academic, something was wrong with the interview. Maybe those experiences or the way they were described might not be a good fit for that specific school, might be a great fit for another school. If somebody is research heavy or somebody's service heavy or things like that might play a role in what each school is looking for, the populations that each school serves, and the educational program and the different things that we're looking for. So I think, of course, having the pre-health advisors is the most important thing because they're the ones that understand those processes really well and can help the applicants. But I don't think there's a tool yet, an AI tool, at least I'm not aware of any that can give such feedback without knowing and understanding the nuances or the different elements that each school is looking for.
There's a
Thanks
million
so much.
reasons why someone might not get in, and it's really going to be particular to individual situation. Can I just say one thing? Think of holistic review as a three-legged stool: academics, test scores, and experiences. And this is just not related to AI. This is just sort of to make sure students really understand that all three of those legs should be strong for the stool to stand up, so to speak. Um, it's not like law school where GPA, LSAT, that's usually kind of what they're looking at. With med school, there's a reason why they ask you to do that long work and activities list and write all these essays. So that's the holistic element of it. And it's inclusive of those other things.
Thanks so much to all three of you. So we created at Learner a online tool for applicants to use that helps them assess their application. So it's not AI, it's a form, it's a flow chart that will take you through what we would do at Learner if we met with you as a unsuccessful applicant that year, and to go bit by bit through the process of your application. Now, the AI piece of it doesn't exist. So this is the human piece that you heard all three of our panelists mention. It will say, you know, did the school send you a secondary or not? And if the answer is yes, then the next question is, did they send out secondaries to everyone, you know, or not? And if the answer is yes, then the next question is, did you meet or beat the, you know, did they have academic criteria, yes or no? And so it takes you through a flow chart of thinking about how to advise a person who hasn't been admitted to med school. That would help you kind of assess why is it possibly why you didn't make it into the school for that year. But it's not AI driven, because we couldn't possibly, with the skill set that we had, bring in all of the medical schools there. So it's not asking you to which schools did you apply and did you meet Case Western's or GW's requirements or not. So it's going to take work from you. I don't have the ability to send it out on the chat here, but I've provided to our AAMC colleague Laura, and she'll get it to you. The caveat with this is that it does ask you for an email address. Again, this was the best way that we could get it out, because it'll produce something that you can print and you can go down the list. I promise you that we have not and will never go in and look at the email addresses, because we have no clue who these individuals are until we can get to the next phase of this, where it will be something that's usable in a different way, where you don't have to provide your email address. So we've got about 7 minutes left. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give us one takeaway that you would like to share with the audience. So as they leave here, they can remember Andy said this, Christian said this, and Yana said this. Andy, we'll start with you.
I feel like I don't know how much more I have to say, but you know, I just want to reemphasize a couple of things that were talked about. One is the technology is evolving fast, and you know, you're going to do the best you can to adapt and continue to adapt and be curious and proactive and ethical. And I guess the other is to, you know, it can be a great sidekick and can help you out a lot, but it's really important to never ever let go of your critical thinking. And, you know, in that sense, continue to use it as a tool.
Thank you, Andy. Christian?
I'm seeing a lot of things in the Q&A about, you know, should I have typos now and things like that. And I guess my one takeaway would be was still try to capture your authentic writing voice. I think when Giannis was saying earlier, we've read thousands of these, and people often ask us, like, what's the best personal statement you've ever read? It's hard to remember like that one, you know, that stuck out for like your entire career. But I think there's ones that you read that as you're reading it, it's enjoyable to read. And it's at that moment that you feel like you think that applicants capture their writing voice and they feel like they're talking to you. And so I think there's a way of responsibly using some of these tools to help, like we said earlier, maybe kind of outline or brainstorm or pre-brainstorm what you're going to write, but making sure it stays your kind of authentic voice, your authentic writing voice. And it's not always easy to capture. But if you work at it and you put in the work that like Andy talked about, that it's messy, it's hard, but that's when you use a little AI to judge a couple things. I think that's cool, because some people have used, if somebody said, what about like, I'm sorry, I've gone on too long, but like spell check's been around forever, for a long, long time, since before some of these people were born. So, I mean, it's okay to have, you know, not have typos. We don't want to see typos. That wasn't the message, but I think that maintaining that your authentic writing voice is what we come across, even if you use a little AI here and there.
Agree. Hopefully, Christian, we're not going to start seeing typos in those essays.
No kidding.
Starting next cycle. Please don't do that. No, my I think an important element to consider here, and I'll go back to the interviews because I think that's a topic that we'll be discussing in the future. It is okay to use AI tools to prepare, to give some depth to some of the responses, but make sure you're genuine and you're not over prep because we can see that. We don't want to talk to someone who keeps talking and just is anxious to give a response because that's how they memorize the response and they want to give it right away. Be genuine, be yourselves because you're great. That we want to see your real self because you are amazing. We've gotten amazing students that will be amazing providers, and we want to see that. You need to show that to your interviewers. It's okay to use AI tools, rehearse, help with some of the responses, but be yourselves. And I think that's extremely important.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for engaging with us and participating in our survey. So I put the survey back up to see how your view of AI and admissions has changed. Some of the things that we said, again, as Christian mentioned, was exaggeration of what we might be seeing, but I see over and over again. So please I don't want your takeaway for this to be that we're looking for errors in your application or misuse or misplaced commas. I spend a lot of money every year to have a Grammarly subscription because I still don't know how to use the semicolons, and I get weekly comments on how well I'm doing. And last week was a bad week. I only did better than 67% of the users in comparison to usual. So again, think of AI as a tool that's supporting the work that you do. And at this place that we're in, I think what AI can provide to us, predictive modeling, for example, of a person that would potentially be successful at a school, and that was already happening. That's why schools set the MCAT and GPAs at the thresholds that they do, because this is the person that's more likely to be successful in their program, right? Which is why they have thresholds for the amount of research and volunteering and service that they want to do. So I want you to walk away not in turmoil thinking about what might happen if we take advantage of resources that are available to all of us to use them ethically and appropriately. And stay tuned. We will have much more to say and share with you as the cycles unfold. So again, thank you all for being here with us today. I'll put the word cloud up again in case any of you want to add something to it. Thanks for being here and good luck to all of you in your academic pursuits. And thank you to our panelists.